Salutations, everyone, and thank you for watching episode 41 of DiabeteicRadio.com. In today's episode, I would like to tell you a story. A story about a man called Galileo who lived sometime during the 16th, 17th century. Now, before I start, beforehand, I just would like to make a note that this is not to attack or to talk down of anyone's faith or religion or anything like that, but this man's story does illustrate how sometimes our faith can literally stagnate our social development, and sometimes even our it hinders even our personal growth. So please, take a moment, sit down, and listen to what I have to say. And also, in this case, I'm going to apply it to health and diabetes. So here it goes. Galileo was someone who lived during the 16th, 17th century, and he was an inventor. He was a philosopher. And he was a scientist and a mathematician. So, long story short, he invented things to find ways to make money. And he actually invented a lot of stuff. He invented, or he was responsible for the pendulum theory, which is now used to regulate clocks. I believe he also, don't quote me, but I believe he also was responsible for inventing the compass, because I knew he made some kind of device to accurately shoot cannonballs. I believe that was the compass. But out of all of his inventions, I think he was best known for the telescope. Now, technically he wasn't the first person to invent the telescope, but he's heard about someone or group of people developing some kind of lens that helps you to see up close. And during that time, that inventor was trying to get his invention patent. And, back then and even today, getting a patent takes a while to do. So during that time, everything was a secret. So Galileo got wind of this. Oh, there's a rumor that they developed this device where you could see things magnified. So him being the person that he is, he wanted to capitalize on that and try to figure out a way how they did it. So he developed it. It later on became a telescope, and he not only perfected it, he made that telescope 10 times greater than what the original invention, the other person device that he invented. You get what I'm trying to say. Anyway, his invention was so good, and it earned him a lot of money. So Galileo didn't want to stop there. He also used, together with his great mind and a telescope, he was able to study the skies. Now, back then, everybody believed that the heavens was beautiful and smooth, and everything was, just perfect. Well, his telescope was powerful enough that he was able to study the moon and found out that the moon wasn't smooth, that the moon wasn't perfect, that it had craters, that it had bumps, that it had mountains. And he also discovered other things as well in space. So now, keep in mind that this was an era where religion science, and philosophy were all one and the same. So Galileo rocked the whole era at that time by discovering that. Now keep in mind, there was a belief during that time that everything evolved around the Earth. Well, Galileo, in his brilliance, discovered that that's not true. That we actually evolve around the sun. And not only do we evolve around the sun, but we have other planets that have their own orbits and have planets that evolve around them, like Jupiter, and like how the moon is our satellite. And it was quite a discovery, and probably quite, well, I know it was quite difficult to believe at the time, and it's fascinating when you think about it, because you have some planets that are steadily rotating around the sun in one axis, and then you have other planets that rotate at a slant at another axis, and then you have other planets that have their own satellites, like we have the moon as our satellite. It not only rotates around planet Earth, but it also moves in accordance with how the other planets moves around the sun. To me, that's quite deep, and at that time, I can see why it would be very difficult for people to accept. Now, the church, of course, still believed that everything evolved around the earth. So the church saw that as heresy. And long story short, Galileo was put to trial and eventually thrown in prison for many, 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 many years for his discovery. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't until recently, I think it was about 1980, that the church finally released his works. Because during that time, they even banned all his writings. The church didn't want anybody reading his theories about, about all the planets evolving around the sun. Now, of course, this is common knowledge today. So we can't think of anybody coming up saying, I don't believe you, Now, the reason why I bring this up is because of the common belief systems, not necessarily the church, but the common belief systems was so strong during that time. If Galileo wasn't a strong person in himself to really show and prove by science that this is what was true, imagine if the church was successful in shutting up Galileo. The church would have been responsible for changing history as we know it for the worse. The church would have been successful in probably throwing us back another 1,000 or so years from technology. I mean, Galileo was so brilliant that we have been able to expand on his idea and his invention for the telescope to move on to other things medically. We're able to see things magnifies. We're able to see things at the what is the word I'm looking for? At a micro level. We can see germs. We can see, everything down to, the molecular level. If we wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for Galileo. So imagine if the church was able to shut Galileo up. I believe, don't quote me, I haven't been able to find it yet, but I believe that Galileo was sent to prison for the rest of his life because of his findings. And it goes to show you how powerful faith and belief systems are. Now, moving over to today, why am I bringing this up? Why is this? Why can I relate this to health? Well, we see this a lot in everyday life, to where some people just have certain belief systems that are not even proven belief systems. It's just some people make assumptions about certain diseases, about certain things in our lives, and we try to turn those assumptions into fact, into wisdom. And we those of us who are blessed to know that we have diabetes, we have the opportunity to learn about our disease, and yet we just don't. We just, and it just floors me to where we have the technology, we have the internet, to where there isn't one thing on the planet that you can't find on the internet. I mean, I mean, you have such an opportunity to just know and learn anything you want. And if you're scared of the internet, that's fine. You have books that are available to you about every single subject you can imagine. You have teachers. You have. I mean, you have so many things to get information on the disease or subject that you want, but yet people just don't. You have nurses and doctors who still practice under certain belief systems, but you wouldn't know it. You, as a layman person, would see a doctor and you just automatically have that trust that that doctor or that nurse would know what they're talking about. You really wouldn't know whether someone is helping you based on scientific fact or personal belief. And I think this is a very important point to make, because, again, and I don't want to pick on nurses and doctors, but a lot of people are practicing their craft under ancient knowledge that isn't true anymore. And they're preaching the same old knowledge to new patients. And yet they pride themselves in helping people. I'm sorry, in my opinion, if you're preaching old knowledge of what once was, you're not really helping people. I mean, it should be a personal goal for you to make sure that you are up to date with any medical knowledge, but in this case with diabetes, because diabetes is so rampant in our community, around the world. Diabetes is everywhere. There's no reason why any nurse or doctor should be practicing with old information, which is also a good reason why every person who knows that they're diabetic should see an endocrinologist. And I'm not pushing my view on you, but the fact is, an endocrinologist is aware of things concerning diabetes that a lot of regular practitioners just aren't aware of. And it's a fact that most people will get better care in terms of diabetes under an endocrinologist than they would under a PCP. Now, there are some exceptions. There are some PCPs, which is a regular doctor, who happen to be diabetes educators, who do know about diabetes. But that's very rare. Most doctors are not diabetes educators, or are in the diabetic communities and are constantly communicating with research organizations like American Diabetes Association and the Joslin Center. A lot of the fact is, a lot of doctors are practicing and nurses are practicing with presumptions about you as a diabetic. And the only way that we can really combat that is by consistently updating ourselves. Just like computers, how computers are constantly updating and evolving. Medicine is the same thing. Medicine is no different. It used to be, there was a time where, they was promoting, eat lots of wheat, wheat cereal, wheat bread, because it's healthy for you, and this and this and this and that. And now we're finding out that a lot of people, and that includes myself, have gluten intolerance, that wheat is not always good for everybody. It used to be at one time that people thought that candy was the culprit of causing diabetes, and now we know that it's sugar of any kind. You know what I'm saying? It used to be people thought that, type 2 was, an older fat person disease, and now we figuring out that not only younger and younger people are getting type 2, but skinny people have type 2. We're discovering that not only do older people get type 1, sometimes even in their 50s before they're diagnosed, but type 1s can also be fat. We're also discovering that not only, that diabetes exists, that we have all these other new categories for diabetes. Categories that I haven't even discussed on a blog yet. We have type 1, we have type 2, we have LADA, we have syndrome X, we have MODY, and then there are several subcategories of MODY. There's so many things that people don't know about. Come on, guys. Diabetes is big. Diabetes is serious. Diabetes can take your life. And contrary to belief, you can be hurt by what you don't know. Please take the time. Both diabetics and professionals alike. Nurses, take the time to know what a pump is. Doctors, know the benefits of a pump. A pump isn't exclusive to people who are type 1. A pump isn't only good for people who have good control, quote unquote. Anybody can benefit from having an insulin pump. Anybody. And it's quite insulting that someone, the doctor would say, okay, if you're not in good control, we will give you this great new pump. It's quite insulting, to me. It's also insulting that an insurance company would not pay for a pump because someone is type 2. It's like, okay, it's you're type 2 because it's your fault, because you were, eating yourself to death, and that's why you're type 2. We now know that that's not true. There are genetic factors that are involved. Fat is also, there's some genetics involved in that. That's why there's some people that no matter how much they try to exercise, they're still heavy set. We pointing a finger and blaming and putting your own ideologies, forcing your own ideologies onto your patients isn't helping anybody. You have to change your way of thinking. Asking someone to write down their sugars and pointing out which ones are the higher ones and say, what happened here? That's not helping anybody. First of all, it's the whole reason why someone is diabetic. They're having problems controlling their sugar. It's not because someone is sitting down at their table eating ice cream all day or eating food all day. That's not the reality of most people. Very, very few people have gotten diabetes because they're sitting around doing nothing, not being active and not eating. Most people, especially if you're living in New York, we are living in a very stressful city here. We are always moving. We have lifestyles that are always hectic, and we're always doing something. We are not always sitting down just eating, stuffing our face till, oblivion. That's not reality. Um, so, um, again, imagine if the church and their belief systems got away with shutting Galileo up. We would have never been able to get to the stage that we're at now with technology. It was because of him that his idea branched out into so many areas in our lives, in particular medicine. So, again, please don't send me a whole bunch of emails about your theologies and stuff like that. The reason why I bring this up isn't to bash a belief or church, but I wanted to tell this story in hopes that we can broaden our minds, and see how important it is to not to close off to new learnings, to new possibilities. Talk to other diabetics and truly find out what's going on. Because you are literally both type 1, type 2, or whatever you are, we are all in the end literally fighting for our lives and making sure that we try our best to live longer and to grow old as gracefully as we possibly can with the least amount of complications as we can. So, I hope that this video has helped you at some point. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let's take it one step further. Let's make a habit of talking to people that we normally wouldn't necessarily talk to. Let's make a habit of talking to different races and see how they live, see how they take care of their diabetes, which is my goal eventually with DiabeteicRadio, to truly learn from each other, from all cultures. Really try to learn about the things that you don't agree with, so that you can truly have a reason as to why you don't agree with something, other than just saying, I don't believe it, or I don't care, I don't think so, without even giving the opportunity of reading about it, so that you can understand why it is that you don't agree with it, if it turns out that you do disagree with something, rather than trying to make someone or sell someone your idea of a particular belief or path without even investigating whether you truly believe what it is that you're saying for yourself. Talk to people, whether they're white, black, Asian, Dominican, regardless of, orientation, whatever. We need to start learning from each other so that we can save ourselves. So, I didn't mean to rant. I hope I didn't bore you. But I thought it was something important that I thought it would be a good idea to talk about. So, thank you for watching, and I wish everyone well, and remember to forgive yourself and love yourself. Bye. Take care.